Welcome this evening. And for tonight's session, we will, I apologize, I'm trying to find some good music. I thought I had some, there it is, okay. Let's, no, nope, wrong one. Okay, we'll do without music. We'll open with a prayer. Thank you, God, for this opportunity. Thank you, Jesus, for being the model of how to share the good news, how to learn and live the good news. We invite the spirits of all who are within range to join this evening's session. For we are here to talk about a topic essential to our progress and transformation. We ask that our minds be open, our hearts be open, our spirits be in synchronicity. And we humbly request permission to begin tonight's session. And so be it. Okay, Mark, what have you done? Unbelievable. I've got a display now after trying to share. Oh my goodness. How do I get back? I've lost my display. All right, I'm going to stop. There we go. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to now share the screen, and we're going to bring up the text from the Spirits book, beginning with question number 100. And the introductory question number 100 sets the table. In other words, gives us a basic understanding of how the spirits are organized in a top to bottom, bottom to top sequence. The spirits are classified based on the degree of their advancement, the qualities they have acquired, and the imperfections they still possess. This classification is by no means absolute. It is only a summary of the typical character for each category. For each one flows seamlessly into the one immediately above it. Specific characteristics of each category blend into one another, as is often the case in nature, as seen in the colors of the rainbow and the phases of a human life. Consequently, spirits may be divided into a number of classes, depending on one's perspective, as in the case of any other scientific classification system. The systems adopted may be more or less comprehensive, rational, or appropriate for understanding. But regardless of this, they have no effect on the facts of science. When questioned in this respect, the spirits themselves vary as to the number of categories into which they are divided. They don't know either. This is not a matter of practical importance to them. Too much emphasis is placed on this contradiction by those who fail to realize that disembodied intelligences completely dismiss any form of orthodoxy. For them, the meaning of a statement is the only important factor. They leave its form as well as the choice of terms and classifications to us, humans. Basically, all that is required to establish some type of a system so that we can make sense of this. But we should also never lose sight of the fact that spirits, just like physical beings, can be very unaware. We can never be too careful in believing that all spirits know everything simply because they are spirits. This is absolutely not true, except for the highest order of spirits. Classification requires a method, an analysis, and a thorough knowledge of the subject. Spirits who possess only a small amount of knowledge are as incapable as unaware humans in terms of grasping the whole scope of any subject, let alone formulating a system. They have no idea, or at best an imperfect one, regarding any sort of classification. All spirits superior to them appear to be of the highest order because they are incapable of distinguishing between the various shades of knowledge, capacity, and integrity by which they are separated. Much like a savage from the jungle would not be able to distinguish between the characteristics of civilized people in a city. Even those who are capable of making this perception may vary in their comprehension of the details, according to their own unique perspective, especially in regard to a matter that is not unconditional. Linnaeus, Jussieu, and Tournefort each have their own classification systems in botany, but the nature of botany has not changed. Just because these three botanists decide to categorize plants differently. Plants are still plants. They have not invented the plants or their characteristics. They've only observed certain analogies according to which they have formed certain groups or classes. Well, we have proceeded in exactly the same way. We have not invented spirits or their characteristics. We've only seen and observed them. The spirits observing themselves. They have judged themselves by their own words and actions, and they've classified them by their similarity. Our classification is based on the information provided by the spirits. Spirits generally acknowledge the existence of three primary categories or main divisions called orders. The bottom of the hierarchy, or the third order, is made up of imperfect spirits who are characterized by the predominance of material instincts over the moral nature, and they have a propensity to be wicked. A level up, the second order spirits are good spirits, characterized by the predominance of the moral nature over the material instincts and a general desire for good. The highest order, or the first order, consists of those who are pure spirits and have attained the supreme degree of perfection. The division of spirits into three separate categories is perfectly logical, and under this general classification, we only need to highlight subdivisions within these three categories. We have done this with the assistance of the spirits themselves, whose benevolent teachings have never failed us. If we were to use a table, it visually would make it easy to determine the superiority or inferiority of the spirits with whom we may communicate, and consequently, the respect and confidence to which they are entitled. Determining these points is a key to Spiritism, as by enlightening us in regard to the intellectual and moral inequalities of spirits, it can explain the inconsistencies presented by spirit communications. We have, however, remarked that spirits do not always belong exclusively to one specific class, as their progress is only accomplished gradually. They may display the characteristics of several categories, a fact that is easily reconciled by scrutinizing their language and their actions. So I'm going to stop through this introductory portion of this, of question number 100, and just reflect on what we've just read. We just read in a very, very complete manner what this categorization is about and why it exists. And there's an absolute contrary reality where the spirits themselves say, this is not all that important. We are all moving from the lowest to the highest. That is why we exist. So at any point in time, categorizing a spirit benefits only those that need to understand where that spirit is coming from, where it is on the ladder, so to speak. Now, as a new spiritist, I reflect in this manner. For quite amount of time now, I've become aware of my lack of discernment. I have a very difficult time when I know I am being communicated with or I am communicating with. Whether it's sending or receiving is not important, but there's a communication taking place. And what I don't know is this very topic, the quality of that spirit. I don't know if that's a lower spirit intending to play off of my newness, my ignorance, or if that's an advanced spirit, a higher spirit that is actually providing me guidance. So each time I read these particular questions, and now I have the opportunity to speak to them, I realize A, my discernment is still not where it needs to be, but B, it's starting to make a lot more sense to me now. And I simply trust that in time, my discernment will increase. In the meantime, we have the opportunity to dig a little deeper into each of these three different, well, two of the three different orders and see some of the distinguishing characteristics that the spirits themselves have defined. So we begin with the lower portion of the spirit hierarchy, the third order, what are called the imperfect spirits. And then there are general characteristics, and you'll see how these characteristics then blend into an actual set of levels. So, as we learned in the introductory section, imperfect spirits have a predominance of matter. That is their predominant influence. They have a propensity to do wrong, often because of matter. And it's marked by ignorance, pride, selfishness, and all the related vile passions. Imperfect spirits intuitively realize the existence of God, but they don't understand God. And they may not even try to understand God. But they are not entirely bad. Some of them are frivolous, lacking reasoning power. They love to be mischievous. They can be downright malicious. Some do neither good nor bad, but the very fact that they do not do good is a glaring indication of their lower order. In contrast, others take immense pleasure in doing wrong and are thrilled when they discover an opportunity to do wrong. So again, these are wired a little bit differently spirits. A certain amount of intelligence is often associated with the malice and the love of the mischief in these spirits. However, regardless of their intellectual development, their ideas lack elevation and their sentiments are inferior overall. Their knowledge of the spirit world is narrow, and what they do know is muddled with the prejudices of the physical life. They give false and incomplete notions of the spirit world, but an intent observer may always find the validation of great truths proclaimed by higher spirits, no matter how imperfect their communications may be. Their language reveals their character. Every spirit who betrays malicious intentions may be ranked in this third order. Every bad thought suggested to our minds comes from a spirit in this order. The happiness enjoyed by good spirits causes everlasting torment on spirits of the third order. This stems from the anguish produced by envy and jealousy. They retain the memory and perception of physical suffering, and this impression is often more painful than reality. They suffer both from the misfortunes they have themselves endured and those that they have caused to others. As this torture persists for a very long time, they feel that they are destined to suffer for eternity. God allows them to believe in this eternal suffering as a form of atonement. Now, these spirits can be further divided into 5 classes, but again, I want to pause here and certainly let all who are reading this and listening in and watching, if you have questions, if you have contributions of thought, feel free to use the chat window and the messaging capabilities to communicate what it is that you would like to share. I want to share again a personal perspective on what we just wrote, what we just read, and what we're about to read. If I honor the Spirit's premise that this is really not all that important, but it's good information to know. It's really good information to know. And I say that if we choose to honor why the spirits don't think this is important, then we won't fall into the trap of trying to figure out where are we. Because as you read these statements that describe these different levels of spirits, you may see yourself in multiple levels. You may understand exactly what the description is saying because you have a quality within you. So let's see what this may reveal. The 10th class, the lowest. These spirits are inclined to do wrong and make it the center of their attention. That is their purpose. They give false and devious advice. They cause conflict and suspicion, and they wear every mask possible to effectively deceive humans. They torment weak people who yield to their suggestions, and they take great joy in delaying the advancement and causing people to fail in the trials of the corporeal life. These spirits are recognized easily by their language they use while communicating. It's vulgar or trivial, whether employed by spirits or human beings, always an indication of moral and at times intellectual inferiority. Their communications reveal the immorality of their inclinations. Try all they might to influence us by speaking in a thoughtful manner, they are unable to keep up the charade and eventually betray their true nature. Some people designate them as malevolent divinities, while others call them demons, evil geniuses, or bad spirits. The human beings embodying these spirits are addicted to all the vices of debasing passions, sensuality, cruelty, deceit, hypocrisy, greed, and avarice, and probably a lot more. They commit heinous acts solely for the sake of doing evil without having any specific motive, and as they hate all that is good, they generally target honest victims. They are a plague upon humanity, regardless of their social standing, and the mask of civilization is not enough to hide their ignorance and depravity. Wow. The lowest of the low. The lowest of the low. Okay, if that's as low as it gets, let's see what one level up is all about. So the 9th class are called frivolous spirits. These spirits are also ignorant, mischievous, irrational, masters of ridicule. They intrude into everything and reply to every question without any regard for the truth. They delight in irritating others, raising false hopes, and misleading people with hoaxes and tricks. Spirits commonly called goblins, sprites, will-o'-the-wisp, and gnomes all belong to this class. And these spirits are often utilized as servants by spirits of higher orders. I found that very interesting. In communications with people, these ninth class spirits are often witty and lighthearted, but extremely superficial. They are quick to pick up on people's quirks and traits on which they comment sarcastically. They are fond of borrowing the names of respected individuals for sport rather than attempting to genuinely deceive. Okay, that's a little better. All right, let's go up another level to the eighth class, false scholars. These spirits often possess considerable knowledge, but fancy knowing a great deal more than they actually know. Having accomplished a certain degree of progress, their language has a tone of dignity that may easily give a false impression of their enlightenment. In truth, their ideas are generally nothing more than the reflection of the preconceptions and flawed reasonings of human life. Their statements are a combination of truths and the most absurd errors, overwhelmed by arrogance, pride, jealousy, and stubbornness from which they have not been able to free themselves. So I'm going to pause and offer a pretty well-known personality example of what we just read. So have you ever known an individual, or have you yourself ever been an individual that experienced a story, an event? And the more times you tell the event, the more exaggeration you put in to the telling of the event, so that the truth over time becomes total fabrication. You went someplace and far, far away was this famous movie star with a whole bunch of people trying to take pictures. And you made a comment, I saw this famous movie star. And 20 years later, you're telling the story. Not only did you see the famous movie star, but you actually walked right next to him or her for about 20 feet in towards his limo. You see, that's an exaggerated story, inflated by arrogance and pride and wanting to be something better than you really are. And I can tell you that, we humans are absolutely easily fall into that trap. Okay, let's talk about the seventh class. We're moving up a little bit. Now we get this neutral spirits. These spirits are neither good enough to do right nor bad enough to do wrong. They are sometimes inclined to one and sometimes to the other. And they're equal to humankind in terms of both integrity and intelligence. Middle of the road. They are strongly attached to the material things in this world, and they greatly miss all their material satisfactions. They are stuck being right in the middle. The sixth class, which is the highest of this lower order, they call these boisterous and disruptive spirits. Strictly speaking, these spirits do not form a clear-cut category based on their personal qualities. They may even belong to any of the third order classes. They often reveal themselves by producing phenomena perceptible to people, such as raps, knocking, the movement and abnormal displacement of inert bodies, rustling of the air, and other similar occurrences. They appear to be attached to matter more than any other type of spirit and are the principal agents in determining changes in the physical elements air, water, fire, or the entrails of the earth. Whenever these phenomena present a deliberate or intelligent nature, a random physical cause should never be assumed. All spirits can produce physical phenomena, but elevated spirits usually leave them to the devices of the lower spirits, who are most suitable to act upon matter than intelligence. When higher spirits deem that manifestations of this nature have a noble use, they employ subordinate spirits as their aids. So it's interesting that this is captured in a title called Boisterous and Disruptive Spirits, because they are still lower order spirits. But that last sentence, when higher spirits deem that manifestations of this nature or have a noble use, they employ these spirits as their aids. That kind of says these spirits have an understanding of being of benefit to others. And that's why they are in this sixth category, close to a higher elevation. I have in my life, to the best of my knowledge, not witnessed spiritual phenomena of any kind. I have witnessed spiritual communication. I have been present through mediumships, multiple mediumships, with a natural curiosity of if I have such a ability that can be nurtured to be able to communicate better with spirits. It is interesting that in only reading small amounts and only witnessing small quantities of the presence of spirit communications, there is no doubt in my mind of their reality. And so understanding these different levels of spirits who are communicating is essential to being an effective medium. You must be able to understand the personalities, the characteristics of these spirits to be an effective medium, to be able to protect yourself as well. And I would love to hear more on that topic from those who can speak directly to it. Okay, we're going to keep going and move into the second order. Now, I will tell you in advance that this is really where I began to realize how inappropriate it is to try to figure out where I exist, because I will see myself in multiple levels. I will see characteristics spanning quite a few of these. And of course, if I'm brutally honest, I realize both my strengths and my weaknesses are contained in this analysis. So this analysis of spirits absolutely applies to the living spirits as well as the discarnate spirits. If we are in fact aware and conscious. And yet, I throw this caveat back at everyone who hears these words. Don't get hung up on where you sit in this hierarchy. Just take the information, and you know what you need to work on. You know what needs transformation and progress. So second order general characteristics. These spirits prevail over matter and desire excellence. In other words, they're not materially driven, they're quality driven. Their qualities and powers to do good match their degree of perfection. Or said another way, with the lower spirits, you focus on the negatives. With the second order spirits, you focus on the positives. While some possess scientific knowledge, others have acquired wisdom and charity. The more advanced spirits combine intelligence with moral superiority. Not yet completely dematerialized, they preserve the traces of their physical existence, which vary greatly according to their rank. These traces are seen either in their method of expression, practices, or even in the quirks and habits still retained by them. If it were not for these weaknesses and imperfections, they would be able to be pure spirits. They understand God and they grasp the concept of infinity. They share the happiness of higher spirits. Doing good and preventing malevolence truly inspires them and makes them happy. Envy, regret, and all the bad passions that torment imperfect spirits have no place in the hearts of good spirits. The love that unites them is an overwhelming source of happiness. Nevertheless, they still have trials to undergo to reach absolute perfection. As spirits, they inspire good thoughts, turn people away from the path of wickedness, protect those whose actions make them worthy of their assistance, and neutralize the influence of lower spirits on the minds of those who do not willingly yield to the sinful guidance of the latter. The human beings that these spirits reincarnate into are good and compassionate towards others. They are motivated neither by pride, selfishness, nor ambition. They feel neither hatred, resentment, envy, nor jealousy, and do good purely for the sake of doing good. Good, protective, and benevolent spirits belong to this order. During periods of ignorance and superstition, people worshipped them as beneficent deities. And they may be divided into four main groups. And again, I'm going to pause now with those general qualities and reflect on what a different tone these descriptions now take on compared to the tone of the descriptions of the third order. Far more positive in nature, far more accepting, far more joyous, far more what we aspire to be. And we see in ourselves a number of these qualities. As spiritists, there is no question that our inherent nature as spiritists encompasses so much of this. And yet, there is much to be improved upon. So moving to the bottom of this second order, the fifth class, called benevolent spirits. These spirits shine in their sense of kindness. They take pleasure in helping and protecting people. Their knowledge is somewhat narrow, and although they have progressed in the moral sense, they are lacking in intelligence. And I would just give my personal reflection. I see myself in these two sentences as my first year as a spiritist. I was so limited in my knowledge, but I was progressing rapidly in so many ways, despite my lack of intelligence, my lack of spiritist intelligence, my lack of consciousness and awareness. But my heart was in the right place. I think. I shouldn't speak so adamantly because it's all still too new to me. The fourth class, scholarly spirits. These spirits are particularly marked by a vast extent of knowledge. They are more interested in scientific research, for which they have a greater aptitude than moral issues. Their scientific studies are always focused on practical utility and are entirely free of the passions commonly possessed by imperfect spirits. I know someone who fits this pretty well. A spiritist who has an absolute passion for the scientific blending with spirituality, with spirits, and has extensive knowledge on quantum physics, but has pushed some of the other part of their transformation to the side. And they might be the first to admit that as well. And I say that only because that's a dear friend of mine, and we are accountability partners to each other. So again, let's not get hung up on trying to categorize each other or ourselves into any of these descriptions. Moving up, the third class of wise spirits. These spirits are set apart by their extremely elevated moral qualities. Not yet possessing unlimited knowledge, they have an intellectual capacity that enables them to judge people and things correctly. These are intuitives. These are individuals with, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, it escapes me. Intuitives, intuition. Superior spirits, the second class. These spirits exemplify scientific knowledge, wisdom, and goodness. Their language only displays benevolence, and it is always dignified and elevated, oftentimes sublime. Their superiority makes them the most likely to be motivated, to share the most honest ideas with respect to the invisible world with human beings, within the limits of knowledge permitted to us. They willingly communicate with those who honestly seek truth, materialism to be capable of understanding. Whoops, I missed a line. Let me try that again. They willingly communicate with those who honestly seek truth and with those who have freed themselves enough from the shackles of materialism to be capable of understanding it. There we go. They dismiss those whose inquiries are prompted only by curiosity or who veer from the path of righteousness in pursuit of material temptations. Under exceptional circumstances, they may incarnate on earth to accomplish a mission of advancement or development. And they show us the ideal perfection to which we can hope to attain on earth. It is interesting that in this description of the second class, there's a direct reference to the reincarnation on earth. And yet you won't find that in the prior descriptions. It does make me wonder about the sequence of reincarnations. The assumption being through each incarnation, the spirit is elevating. But it may, as we know, take multiple incarnations to even have modest progress. Some accelerate, some take much longer. Obviously, these are close to perfection individuals. These are the highest of the almost perfect. And it's also interesting to think about humans in history and how their historical significance has been captured, or if it's within the last 50, 60 years, how it has been imaged to all of humanity. I think of, the whole world knew about Princess Diana from marriage to death. The whole world knew about 9/11. So there are some events and some individuals that absolutely are on display. Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. There's some amazing examples of elevated spirits. And it's not important where they sit in this ladder, this hierarchy. It's not important, because what you realize is they've got the highest of qualities. And the moral character is not in question. And then there are the pure spirits. And there's not a whole lot that has to be said, and certainly no need to categorize them with any details. They only have consistent general characteristics. Matter has no influence. They are characterized purely by their moral and intellectual superiority in relationship to all the other spirits. The creme de la creme. I reflect on this set of questions in the Spirit's book. Now that I've done this 3 times in the last month, it's really amazing the power of this information to understand the evolutionary nature for all of us, the path for all of us. I hope to get questions and comments from today's presentation. Louisa, would you like to say anything?
Will you read the 113?
I have to go find the Spirit's book.
Okay, no problem. Well,
I think what I would like to do is pick that up next week, because this is a good stopping point.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard you saying that.
Actually, I'm sorry. You are absolutely correct. Question 113 is the end of this thing, end of this section, where we talk about the first order. So let me talk a little bit more about the first class. These spirits have climbed every rung of the ladder of progress and have shed all the impurities of matter. As they have reached the sum of perfection, they can be achieved by created beings. As they have reached the sum of perfection that can be achieved by created beings, they no longer experience trials or tribulations. They are no longer subjected to reincarnation. They enter eternal life in the immediate presence of God. They enjoy permanent happiness because they are no longer subject to the wants or variations of material life. This happiness is not the tedious idleness of perpetual contemplation. They are God's messengers and ministers, the executors of God's will in maintaining universal harmony. They exercise independent control over all inferior spirits, and they aid them in accomplishing their purification and assign each of them a mission for their progress. They genuinely strive to assist human beings in their time of need by motivating them to the love of good or making amends for the faults that keep them from supreme happiness. They are sometimes called angels, archangels, or seraphim. People can communicate with them. However, those who claim to have them constantly at their service are foolishly ignorant. Yes. I believe I'm going to stop sharing. The idea that the purest of spirits are responsible for all other spirits. That challenges me only in the sense of the volume. For it was recently that there was a discussion about how many incarnate and discarnate spirits there are on the planet. And to consider that a select group of spirits at the highest order are literally managing that volume of spirits, establishing missions for those who are coming in through reincarnation. It is an amazing process to consider. There's so much depth in this spirit hierarchy. And I would contribute one more thing that's not spelled out in this section of the spirits book. It is spelled out in other Kardec material, and that's I'm going to call it consistency or the physical nature of the spirits. In that, as the spirits are at the lowest order, they are the most dense physically. And as they move up the hierarchy, they get less dense. And in the higher spirits, they are, for lack of a description, opaque in nature, transparent. They are ethereal more than physical. And it is interesting to consider the progress of the spirits through the hierarchy over the many years, millennia, etc., for that to continue to take place. And that
Yeah, I was reflecting about where we are. I know we don't need to think a lot about it, but we are in the very first one, the third order, because we are in peer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when you said you recognize yourself in many of these
orders.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, you see qualities.
Yeah, orders. Yeah, that's a word in many of these orders. So, but it doesn't mean that we are many orders. So because when we evolve, so we will get better and better, and we will not have actions or bad actions. So if we have any thought, a bad actions, is because we are not pure enough.
Correct.
We're not advanced enough. So yeah, unfortunately, we are in the very third class.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope when you were reading, I find myself thinking, I hope I am the neutral one. I hope, because my ego, well, I would say the Louise a year ago was more arrogant, because I used to think I do good things. I'm this kind of, so I ignore the bad things, the bad thoughts, especially thoughts, luckily not much actions that I think that we used to do plenty many years ago, but we are as humanity, it's because we are evolving as well, but I do more bad things than I would like to, more bad thoughts than I would like to. And I do so much less good things that I'm capable of. And so the equilibrium between the bad and good things, I hope I get in the neutral order, because after that is evolution. Before that, so maybe I am in the before the neutral. I have a big chance, but hope to get there. Not this one, not this life, but yeah. And when we recognize we are not as good as we wish we are, we can find ourselves in the right place. So just this, because I don't know if someone is watching, and then, oh, by the way, you have a question, you have a comment
I do.
on the chat.
I
Yeah. And when we think about it, it's, yeah.
The comment says, we are of these class of impure spirits too. If we just attribute our bad thoughts to these discarnate impure spirits, it tempts us to not take accountability for our own thoughts and deeds. Oh, that's excellent. That's absolutely true. I know in my case, I've been cautioned to not allow my guilt to run crazy as I become conscious and aware of 60 years before Spiritism, living as a thinking human and doing as many wrong things and thinking as many wrong things and having wrong habits and so on and so on and so on. And then at such a late stage of life to discover, well, not that late, in my 60s, I discover Spiritism, or it discovers me, and the light bulbs go on, and my eyes are open for the first time, and I'm looking at myself in a way I've never looked at myself before, and I've got instructional material that serve as a guideline for me, and I am but a small piece of this much more incredibly complex environment God has created. And yet I'm part of that process, and it's essential that I understand that process. So, okay, I'm at my infancy. I'm down in that lower section, that third order. But I know, as you said, when you aspire for the neutral, you know what you're trying to get to. You know what you're trying to eliminate in your life. You know what you have to work on. You know what core competencies have to be developed, what knowledge needs to be filled, et cetera, et cetera. There's no ignoring it anymore. It's right there for you to see. Now it's up to free will and commitment and discipline and such to act upon it. I think that's it. Would you like to close us in prayer?
I never did a prayer in English.
I'm going to ask you to do a closing prayer in Portuguese.
No, let's keep in English. I will try. I will do a short one, or maybe Rob. Rob, do you want to finish? Do a finish prayer?
Oh, thanks, Rob.
It's okay. You've been volunteered already. next time. The
Okay.
next one.
So let's close our eyes. Let's elevate our thoughts, our feelings. And let's to be thankful for this opportunity to knowing ourselves better, knowing the spiritual world, to think about our actions, how to be a better person, how to be a better human being, and how to be a better version of ourselves. Let's feel thankful for our life, for the opportunity that we have to study, to have good reflections about what we want, what we can do, what's the best for us and for our community, for the world. Let's be thankful for Jesus, our friend, who gave us beautiful examples that we need to follow. So to finish this study for today, let's just be thankful and keep going. Keep elevating our thoughts, trying to be the best version that we can be, a better person every day, day by day. And so be it.
So it is. Thank you, Luisa, for setting this up and managing.